Thank you very much, colleagues. I'd like to note if there are any members who would like to make any remarks. I see Honorable Chachal, Honorable King. Okay, as I continue to note members that would like to engage, I think firstly, let's appreciate and welcome the work that's been done by the DSI and its entities. Sorry, I just have something that's distracting me here. I'd like to welcome the work that's been done by the department and its entities. I think generally we have done quite well, and really to acknowledge the tone when colleagues engage. I felt this when we were interacting with the Department of Higher Education at the beginning of the year, when they presented their performance plans. I really felt that, one could get a sense of the committee in the presentation of the department. And I must say, even now, as you're reporting, you sound like the committee as you emphasize issues relating to ensuring that there's direct impact on the livelihoods of citizens. I think that's how Mr. Jahana, in fact, spoke. Think of, in fact, all the chairpersons and the CEOs right at the beginning. So I think colleagues are really listening to the committee across the different entities, and really understanding how we have fixated as this portfolio committee on the importance of impact, inclusion, to ensure that the work that we're doing meets the needs of the people that it's intended to meet, right? Or to address the people whose problems it's intended to address. So I really want to appreciate that colleagues seem to understand the direction that the committee would like for the national system of innovation to take. And then I would, of course, have acknowledged the performance of colleagues. And though there have been material findings when it comes to the HSRC, which we did engage with or engage on with the AG and the department last week. And we must appreciate the effort that has been made by the board and by the executive management in trying to, I guess, turn the tide at the institution or make some sort of progress in terms of the audit outcomes of the institution. And so we must acknowledge that. And, when I listen to Dr. Lubisi speak, I really am assured of the fact that the accountability ecosystem, in the context of the committee, the department, the AG, and then the HSRC, is intact, because you would have come, we would have raised our concerns when you presented your performance last time. You gave us confidence in the new plans that, you're going to try and turn the tide, and already we're seeing progress. And also when I listened to Dr. Lubisi also speak about interventions of the board at the HSRC, one is brought into confidence that someone is holding the fort for us, because Tina, we can't be there with each entity every day. So we are assured of the fact that when we're not there, the board is playing the role that they ought to be playing in relation to the accountability ecosystem. And generally, when one looks at the audit outcomes, when one looks at the performance of the entities, you are brought into confidence in terms of the state of the accountability ecosystem. So I just thought one would acknowledge that. And we do note the concerns that have been raised by colleagues around energy sustainability and, the impact of load shedding. And it is our responsibility as a sector to assist the country in finding solutions in relation to that. We're noting, of course, issues regarding funding. But, we always say that when it comes to funding, we do need colleagues to meet. We can't underperform in any aspect, particularly when we're asking for additional funds. And yes, there is a correlation between funds and performance. But we do need to be meeting our targets. Another matter that over the years, the DSI has explained to us regarding overperformance. And the DSI has, of course, explained this to us over years to say, look, at times it's very hard to set a particular target because you're not certain of the funds that you have. But we need to find a way to create some sort of patterns. And it's something that one continuously reflects on, So I think for now, I'd like to note those matters. And to the HSRC, I don't know if the department shared with you some of the reflections we made last week when they presented, or the reflections we made with the AGM themselves last week. The AG makes a note that as a sector, but in particular in relation to the HSRC, perhaps there's a reflection we need to make around the tracking of the timeless completion of qualifications. And when I look at that observation by the AG, and look at us not being able to meet the target in relation to peer-reviewed journal articles being published per HSRC Research Hub, I wonder if there's no correlation between the two, our tracking of timeless completion and what contributes to the lack thereof. And so we're speaking about qualifications, but now just generally in terms of performance, the tracking thereof, because your performance as the HSRC is also informed by a couple of other people, researchers. And so is there perhaps some correlation that colleagues have made between the need to boost tracking mechanisms or monitoring and monitoring mechanisms together with the meeting of particular targets? And yeah, one just wonders if colleagues have made any reflection in terms of that. With that being said, I'd like to note Honorable Chachao, Honorable King, Honorable Mananiso, Honorable Sibia, and then Honorable Shikwamban. Honorable Chachao.
Chairperson, thank you. It's still morning, 2 minutes away from day. Good morning to you. Good morning, colleagues. I'm going to borrow on all the greetings and protocol observations you've made. Allow me, Chairperson, to also say thank you to all the presentations that were made and the manner in which they were made. Very a distinct way of doing things in this particular department within their ministry, and that I appreciate. Chair, I don't have much, particularly given the performance of the entities/councils. First, with the NRF, I want to say congratulations to you for your performance. I think it's very refreshing to sit in this particular committee and be able to observe work that is done in the manner that it is being done, particularly given the headaches we have with DHET. So thank you for that. And I'm hoping that sincerely across board to not only the NRF, to the HSRC and the CSIR, that the outperformance and the meeting of targets is not a result of there being a low bar set in order to outperform on paper, but that it is truly an indication of or a reflection of hard work, and I'm hoping that could be a consistent thing. I want to ask, previously when we engaged with the NRF, they had indicated that they were experiencing financial challenges as far as meeting the demand of NRF applicants. Previously, they had indicated that 75% of those applicants end up not being able to receive funding from the fund. Where are we with that? Are things a bit better? Have we been able to find ways to move rands around to accommodate more applicants to meet the goal? Secondly, I want to find out how far are we on closing the gap between key government challenges and high demand jobs. So particularly with key government challenges, where are we with closing the gap on our 4IR, fourth industrial revolution? We're still lagging behind there. We have issues with load shedding and environmental challenges. What progress has there been made? Has been made as far as that concerned. That's what I want to know from the NRF. And again, I want to say, given that the work that NRF does is pretty similar to that which NSFAS does, sometimes one wishes that we could just swap management and or have you guys absorbed with the devolution of the other one into you. Maybe we would have a better outcome with NSFAS. That's just on a lighter note, Chair. With the HSRC, I want to ask, and this is the HRC and the CSIR. I'm pretty much appreciative of the fact that the body work is done within universities. But has there been any work that has been done in opening up the council to include TVET students with specific focus on industrial sociology, actually? Has that been thought out? Where are we if that has been the case? Is this possible? What's the feasibility there? And then the second thing to the HSRC is we have communication and writing on the skills audit outcomes that was spoken of. Unless that's already in the records, then the Secretariat can just pass them on. If not, then please can we get that clear outcome so that we have a better understanding of the scope of work that still needs to be done to recover the state of public service and administration in the country. And then on the CSIR, again, congratulations to you guys on keeping to your strategy and growing your income and the outperformance itself on your KPIs. I just need to know, you have communicated that you want to work on commercialization to improve your technology license agreements. But I need to know, what are the reasons apart from the commercialization? Yeah, it's one of those mornings. Constraints. What other reasons do you have outside of the comms constraints that added to the deviation from targets and why you didn't meet your targets? Secondly, I love the app idea. Shout out to you guys, because I pretty do love the use of technology to advance the quality of life for all of us. So it's great that you're doing that in Gauteng. But what about other provinces? So particularly the Free State. I mean, I am biased because I am from the Free State, and I know that we could use a whole lot of improvement there. And I'm saying this aware that we don't even have something as basic as Uber services there. So that would be very challenging for you guys to up and get that done. But I think there's an appetite there, particularly given that majority of the population in the Free State is a youthful population. So that's something maybe you might want to look at. Yeah, but obviously other provinces as well. So it's great that it's working in Gauteng. Where are we with other provinces? That's that from me, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chachal. Honorable King.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning to everyone on the platform. Chair, let me also extend my heartfelt congratulations to all the entities present, especially to the HSRC for their improved audit outcome. It is greatly appreciated to see that you take what you do very seriously. So Chairperson, you and Honorable Chachal covered some of my questions. I'm just going to go through 2 or 3. To the CSIR Chair, I just wanted to find out, in terms of the plant and equipment, the lifespans. Previously, I asked the question to find out the typical lifespan on their buildings and the electrical infrastructure. And the reply basically indicated that they have surpassed their lifespan on their buildings and on their electricity infrastructure. I just want to find out, Chairperson, what strategies and if they put in place to ensure they expand on the lifespan on these infrastructures, and how far they are in ensuring that when the Department of Higher Education move in with the CSIR, that these issues are being taken care of. Chairperson, I also want to talk to the HSRC with regards to the deficit that they are experiencing. I just want to find out in the long run, what measures are they going to put in place to ensure that they do not fall next year into another deficit, which could have detrimental effect on the entity. Chair, in terms of the critical skills list, we cannot overlook the important work that is being played by the three entities concerned. And I just wanted to find out to ensure that we narrow the gap on the critical skills within the country. Also, in terms of commercialization, the patenting of it. Are there any challenges with regards to patents? And we note that they indicated there is a bit of a regression in terms of licensing. And I know Honorable Gagau has mentioned challenges. I also just want to find out the challenges they might experience and what mitigating strategies they've put in place to ensure that that is addressed, Chairperson. And that's it from me, Chair.
Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable King. Honorable Mananiso.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. Let me start by welcoming all the three presentations. And I must say that on your remarks, you have actually covered me to say indeed, when DSI comes before us, we are able to trace whatever that we could have advised as the portfolio committee. And indeed, it really shows that we've got people who are able to listen, implement as recommended. Chair, I think on other issues, I'm covered by Honorable Gagau and Honorable King, more especially on inclusion of universities, and as well on the issue of licensing, the risk mitigation for licensing, because of it is one of the things that one have noted that it's one of the challenges that CSIR have a problem with. Chair, I want to check on NRF. Slide 22, they are indicating that there's delays in transfer of funds by DHET for the Scarce Skills Development Fund. So I want to check, how did this affect the work of the entity? And perhaps we must take it upon ourselves as the PC to see to it that we assist the entity, that next time it shouldn't be affected by processes from DHET. On the issue of HSRC, I think, Chairperson, we must appreciate their work in terms of their strategy of Lee double PT plus S. I think it really shows that they are making sure that they bring innovation in terms of issues of regularities. I've seen that they have inclusion of judiciary and other entities when I was reading their report, and one would tell that indeed when you are serious on issues of regulations, you would need people who are actually in line with contracts and the law at large. So I think it's recommendable that they are bringing innovations in terms of doing their work. On the issue of motivations in terms of staff, Chairperson, I want to check if they've got an alternative programs that they would want to have in terms of ensuring that they keep high morale of staff, because we know that at times other people, they become demoralized and leave institutions, and that creates instability. So I want to check if they do have a plan in place to ensure that at least, even if the hours didn't take place, but they would have other programs to mitigate that particular part of motivation for their staff. And to all entities, I want to check if they do have plans for retentions of skills, because at times when we engage with entities, we are able to get sense that the issue of retention is very problematic on the basis of the rewards and salaries and so on. So I want to check if all entities have that particular plan in place so that they are able to keep retaining their staff. And I must say, Chairperson, in Mohlakeng, we are one of the beneficiaries of a basic education program in terms of specialized schools. So at least whatever that has been presented today here, one is able to take a note and say that this is about transformation of bettering the lives of our people. The issues of road, I think we all know that how the app is trying to actually assist in fast-tracking challenges that we have on bed infrastructure. On CSIR, I want to check if the CSIR, are they part of the ICT forum in South Africa? Because I believe that the department has capable programs and system in place to actually bring this ICT forum into where it's supposed to be on issues of innovations and technology. So I want to check if they are part of the forum. Slide 12, I think we have covered it, is the issue of license agreement, Chairperson. And on slide 19, one of the deviations and challenges is with regards to the procurement of PPEs. So I want to check with the entity if they do have plans to make sure that in future they actually produce their own PPEs, because I think they've got a capable workforce and the systems there. So I want to check if is it one of those plans that they can bring forth as an entity. We welcome all the audit outcome, I must say, as all members could have said, because of that's how we measure performance. And with this department, it is not only about targets achieved, Chairperson, one must say, but it's about the outcomes, because of we are able to, touch and feel and see some of us where we follow them on website. On slide 24 for CSIR, again, the plans to increase local public income, can they share those particular plans with us if they do have? Because of, I think that in other issues, they have elaborated on what is it that they are going to do to ensure that they deal with issues that are pending. Chairperson, I've got many things to ask as clarity, but I want to acknowledge as well the program for young people that it is so innovative in a sense that here it was not up, the conference was not about what can be done, but it was about what do you do. So it is really encouraging that you've got people that understand that young people have innovation and young people have plans and they can take this country forward. So I'm very happy on how they actually coordinated that particular program from the youth perspective, that it is not about that WONA as an entity we've got answers, but it was about to say you can contribute as the generation in terms of making sure that we grow this country. Chairperson, the other thing I think you have spoken on it, issues that the funds will continue lobbying and advocating for funds for these entities, because at least we can see their work. But as I conclude, the issue of inclusion of other institutions, it is important, noting that on the presentation, Yabone, they only speak about 2 universities, NRF. So I want to check if Other universities, will they be included in some ways during the conference or virtual or otherwise? But we are very happy about the outcomes of the audit and the performance itself. Thank you.
Thanks, Honorable Manani. So, Honorable Sibia.
Thanks, Chairperson. Greetings to everyone. Thanks for my presentations. I would like to appreciate really the good work which has been done by 3 entities. However, we have got questions on NRF. Is there any an update on the new infrastructure and the work done so far at the institutions? The other one would like to know whether the amount allocated for funding of the 6 postdoctoral innovation program fellowships was it equal? And would like also to know the scale of work that had to be produced by the fellowships. And we, HSRC, HSRC has made a significant progress in addressing the findings from last year's audit. The question is, what progress can be reported against addressing the existing findings, and how much of the funds have been recovered to date? Are there any significant policy program or organizational changes currently underway? With regard to budget expenditure, can you explain the relation between performance achieved and the budget expenditure? Can we get full reasons for underperformance as well as how this is being addressed to avoid under or non-performance in the current financial year? I think the other questions are covered by previous speakers. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Ma'am Sibia. Honorable Shikwambana.
Thank you, Chair. Greetings to you, Chair, and the members of the committee and all the representatives from the different entities that are present here today. Let me take this opportunity, Chair, and congratulate the ongoing progress made by the EFF Students Command in the universities for taking everything. That is an indication that the young people are ready to deliver the EFF come 2024, as we say, to see change in government. And they've started demonstrating that in the institutions of higher learning. But by the way, let me go straight to the questions which I have, Chair. I've got a question with the NRF, where as they outlined, they spoke about the issues. They've covered many issues, be it your transformation and everything that they actually stand to represent as an entity or as an organization. But they also touched on the issue of energy, wherein they've indicated their partnership with the private sector in seeking solutions to the energy crisis that we are faced with as South Africa. Us not having a load shedding today does not mean that the problem or the crisis of load shedding, there is a solution that has been found, that it can be a long-lasting solution. So I want to know from them, as they engage and partner with different private sectors, that can we get a sense of a research conducted on energy that clearly highlights on how this crisis of electricity cuts and load shedding can be resolved, and what are the guarantees that science and research can give to the people of South Africa that we do have enough capacity to provide electricity, or we are giving up on this battle of load shedding and electricity crisis that which we are having if we cannot get an indication from the researchers and the people dealing with the technology on how these things can be resolved as they partnered with Sasols. What are the serious issues that are in discussion that seek to want to take us into addressing the crisis of electricity which we are found with as the country now. And then I will go to HSRC. The HSRC gave their presentation. The chairperson spoke, and we know he made it clear that they are actually following the recommendation, or they did follow the recommendation of the AG from the audit opinion that was given to the entity. And amongst others, the chairperson further went to say there are 51 instances of financial irregularities that were there in the entity, and investigations were conducted and made, and consequence management was implemented. But we do not know what are those consequence management that has been implemented and who is implicated, and was the person fired? There was a warning to them or a suspension to them. Are these people arrested or not? That's the report we are not getting to say what is actually consequence management that they can say to us. This is the tangible thing that we can give to the committee to say this person was involved in financial irregularities, and this is what we have done up to so far. And then and also on recovering potential losses, how much was actually lost and how much was recovered up to so far, because we need to know how much did you lose. If you have lost this much, how much have you recovered? If there's a surplus of recovery, when do we expect this surplus of recovery to be obtained again, and so on and so forth. So we go to this chair, as I may want to end here. The entities gave their reports, chair, and their reports were it seems like there's a work done, there's a progress in the work that the entities are actually doing. But the disappointing part is that when of which I found almost in all the presenters here who made their presentation is that there's that thing to say we've got a good plan of action as the entity that we have in place, but we are mostly disappointed because we do not have enough funding to run these programs of ours. There's always a cry to say we do not have enough fundings, we do not have enough resources to carry out our mandate as the entities. And it is worrisome because the people who should be part of this meeting, listening to these cries of these entities, and at least go out and seek interventions on giving these people resources, are always not in our meetings. They are accompanying people elsewhere to do their own work. The minister is accompanying the president to go and do his own work. Here are the entities are crying that they don't have resources. The minister is not here to listen to them. And I don't know that us as sitting here, well, what are we going to say? Are we going to tell the minister in his absentia that there was a meeting and the NRF, they are complaining of funding? And how are you planning to at least assist the NRF in terms of funding? That is why minister in the previous meeting said to us, Chair, that we are overdoing our work and we seek things that which does not sit with our terms of references, where he even said we cannot even invite some of the entities to come and account like the like of these entities that are here before us. It is because this minister does not appreciate his responsibilities. He appreciates the responsibilities of the presidency. Hence, every time he's always with the president, accompanying president, as if the president is scared. We don't know what is he scared of. because the minister should be part of this meeting, listening to these people who are coming with good proposals.
Point of order, Chair.
Who've got good plans
Point
in
of
action
order,
to
Chair.
say they want to run these entities, but they don't have money. The person who should be taking account of all these things is forever not available in our meetings. It's a pity that these entities, they will continue not to have money, not to get resources, because there's no government to listen to them. There's no ministers who are responsible for them.
Chairperson,
That must come and listen to them.
Honorable Shikwambana.
So we've got serious problems with such behaviors.
Honorable
Always sit in
Shikwambana.
meetings in the absence of the minister,
please?
and people are crying here, they want assistance, and they
Honorable Pillay.
yes, Chair. Honorable Mananiso was raising a point of order. Twice she said so.
Apologies for that. Honorable Mananiso.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. I think one would want to call a point of order on Honorable Shikwamban to say that referring to the minister not being here as if he is cutting the president, it is wrong. I mean, he is executing his executive work as the minister. And we cannot come here and question why this and that. I mean, his input is valid in terms of other responses to say that people who are supposed to take note of issues that are raised here are not here. But going further, in terms of, he has a rule book in terms of where the minister must go, it's very out of order. So I'm just calling point of order on that part to say that let Honorable Shikwambani make his input without, saying things that are not there.
Thank you, Honorable Mananiso. Honorable Shikwambana, can you please continue with your input?
Thank you, Chair. As I'm about to conclude, Chair, that's what I wanted to say, that the entities, I'm happy and very satisfied with the work they're doing. They are trying. They are very trying, Shemi, just that they've got no one to listen to the good work they are giving, to also even take the necessary steps that may need to be taken after they've done this good work so far. So it is petty, but we will try and we will make sure that we continue to assist these entities. And the only time that time will come to assist these entities to make sure that we develop our country, we develop our society, and we make sure that we capacitate people in our society, is to make sure that we get a proper government that will be listening to its people and the entities that seek to transform the lives of our people in large. Because this government of the day does not have interest in any work done by the entities. Hence, they're not here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Shikwambana. Honorable Boshoff.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Sorry for the time lag here. Due to travel plans the way I traveled and signal problems, I did not attend. So especially with the NRF, if my question has been dealt with, the minutes once we receive it. I have this one inquiry, and that is that in correspondence with Dr. Nelmo Mondo, he indicated that two very senior members were put on suspension. And I don't want to ask, I understand it's not possible to give a progress report on something like that. I just want to be taken into confidence whether these suspensions will have a negative impact on the activities of the NRF. And the reason why I'm specifically asking this is because the NRF is actually a little bit of a department on its own, with all the different entities which fall under the NRF on its on its turn. So there's a wide variety. It's not if the HSRC or the CSIR has problems, then it is more limited than when the NRF has problems. So I would like to know about that. Then with the CSIR, I asked a written question to the minister, in which I received the answer, which I believe was prepared by the CSIR, and that is in connection with the National Laser Center, which we visited, that 3D printing machine that we saw with our first oversight visit in the beginning of 2020. And just by way of background, there was a forensic report which we had quite some trouble to get on the public domain. And that indicated serious misconduct within the National Laser Center. And the answer on the question of consequence management was that the people involved were not working with the CSIR anymore, so there could be no actions be taken against them. Now, my most recent question was whether something is actually happening at the National Laser Center. And the answer I got wasn't quite clear, to say the least. It came to something like we are engaging with partners in order to proceed with the advantages of the National Laser Center. If I could ask, I know it's a kind of an operational question, and that the CEO would say, Dr. Dlamini would say, well, I don't know what's happening in every office or every workshop on the CSIR every day, but is something actually printed at the National Laser Center? Is the National Laser Center doing something physical, not having staff, but that machine, is it working? Because this thing is going for basically our whole term. Since we were elected, it was shown to us as a show product of the CSIR. And I just get this inclination or this idea that it's nothing more than that. And I would like to be convinced that I am wrong. And then to the HSRC, I think one always has some sympathy with the HSRC if you are trained in the humanities yourself, like I am. And that is that it's normally not the sexy study areas. And even when a student enrolls for a humanities degree, he or she already knows that the big money and the flashy occupations are not the ones that they are working towards, but normally they have a strong feeling and passion for that kind of work. And the fact that the HSRC could secure more funding from abroad should really be commended. And I can't speak on behalf of the committee, but I'm sure that we will support the request that money which were not spent but didn't come from the parliamentary grant remains with the HSRC. Yeah, maybe I should leave it at that. I don't really ask the HSRC anything in this regard, except the problem that when people have to start saving money, like presently, they say, okay, what can we stop doing which won't take the food out of anybody's mouth? And institutions, especially research institutions, but more so humanities institutions, will be first in line to have reductions. And then at a certain stage, when a situation explodes, people say, okay, but what's going on here? We don't understand. And that is where the guys in the humanities actually came in, whose job it is to understand what's going on in people's minds. So it's a penny wise, pound foolish way to save. But that is just to support and commend the improvements that we are heard of at the HSRC. So that would be all from my side. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Boshoff, and thank you very much to all honorable members for your comments and your questions. I think we will now be handing over to the different entities to respond. We'll start with the NRF, and then we'll go to the HSRC and end with the CSIR. And I really want us to appreciate the work that these entities have done. Noting, of course, the concerns that members have raised, which I believe you'll be able to respond to. And also acknowledge that this department has received a great amount of support, and it's because it also has functioning machinery. I think when you look at the likes of Dr. Lubisi, the recent appointments, in fact, when we look at the start of the year and when we received the annual performance plans from each entity, there was a huge cohort of new leadership in the different institutions, and the leadership that has been put in place with the support through the guidance of the ministry and the department led by the DG, Dr. Mdracha, when we look at the leadership that we have in the sector, I think we really want to acknowledge the support that the sector and the system gets from its political and executive leadership or administrative leadership. The committee pushed for years that we finalize the now I'm forgetting which entity is this. Which entity was it, Shanaz, again, that was acting for a long time? I'm trying to remember. Mr. Cele. Yeah, Mlungisi Cele. Mlungisi Cele acted forever. And we, as the committee, pushed and pushed that we need to finalize the leadership there or stabilize the leadership there. And the leadership of the ministry and administration listened, and we have stable leadership at NACI. So I don't want us to create a picture, colleagues, that there's no support that the sector is receiving from the ministry. So what we need to collectively do, and that's, when you look at the district, not the district, sorry, the decadal plan, and you look at what the decadal plan seeks to achieve, it is what I believe is the answer to us having a greater budget for work within the national system of innovation. When the decadal plan speaks about budget coordination and it speaks about an integration of science, technology, and innovation into the work of government, at all spheres of government, national, provincial, and local, it will alleviate some of the pressures that our entities are facing. And so we're really happy that, in this administration, we have finalized the decadal plan. It was I don't want to say a pet project, but Honorable Mapulane used to harbor, the former chair of the committee used to harbor on the matter of us finalizing the decadal plan and putting it into implementation. The various entities have raised today, in particular relating to funding, greater investment by private sector in research, development, and innovation, greater investment by government itself, or an uptake by government itself in relation to the solutions that we find within the national system of innovation. I mean, just last week, I don't know what entity it was, I can't remember now, but they were reporting on a lot of one of the targets, I think it was, I'm trying to see here, I don't think it was TIA, can't remember now, Renee, but one of the entities shared with us how they've been able to meet their targets, and in fact have gone beyond their target in relation to the uptake or support that they are giving to local municipalities. And that means there's a greater uptake, because if you track back the discussions we've been having with the department and its entities, initially, the department and its entities weren't able to meet their targets in terms of being able to support municipalities and district municipalities in integrating science, technology, and innovation into the work that they do. And when we asked why, entities would respond that no, the uptake, there isn't willingness by the individual that needs our solution to actually interact on what the solution is and, implement it. And so that target is now being met. And of course, this is coupled with an appreciation by government at various spheres of the need to really live up to what the district development model speaks about. And so I don't want us to create a narrative, colleagues, that there's no political leadership in this particular sector, because without political leadership, you won't be able to achieve some of the strides that we've seen. I mean, the task teams that we're seeing with Treasury, with the Planning, Monitoring, and Evaluation department, with this particular department, that task team and the coordination we're seeing there will have a ripple effect in terms of the work our entities are doing. I mean, if I was very happy personally, Dr. Lubisi, to see the fact that task team includes Treasury, because it means that this cry of ours as a sector and a system relating to funding, maybe, our pressures will be alleviated a bit, because then Treasury will be closer to our needs, and there'll be a better way of coordinating the budget needed to really integrate STI into government in order for us to meet the needs of the people that we truly represent, the proletariat, women in our communities, persons living with disabilities. And so let's really strengthen the fact that we need to ensure that the sector continues to be supported. I think we've engaged as a committee and tried to reflect on the positioning of the department, whether or not it should be put at presidency. And those are some of the things that we're hoping the ministerial, what is it called? Interministerial committee will sort of also look into, right, over the years. Will the decadal plan assist us with the task teams at setting up in terms of better budget coordination and earmarking of funds? Will it assist us with the current location of the department, also taking into consideration the higher education, science, technology, and innovation landscape here still? Are we okay the way we are? Do we need a couple of years to sort of monitor how we're managing in terms of what we want to achieve using the decadal plan with the department positioned where it's positioned, or do we need to move it towards presidency over years? Those are discussions we've always been having as the committee. But right now, where we're located, I really think that we need to acknowledge the importance for us to continue to support this department and its entities. And I always say that I think the sector needs activists. It needs people who are passionate about it. It needs ambassadors, because there's so much great work that is being done here. And it just needs people who can really share the good story of this particular sector and, be a motive force, really go out there and lobby departments. I mean, we've tried as a committee by having joint committee meetings with other portfolio committees, so that when they are sitting in their committees with their departments, they can ask their departments, why aren't you taking up some of the solutions that the CSIR has? Why aren't you supporting or coordinating your budget that the HSRC is doing to solve some of the problems that we have? So we have tried as a committee to also create that particular network to strengthen the work that you're doing and support the work that you're doing. So yeah, I think there's leadership, and we have a collective responsibility within the accountability ecosystem to make sure that this department achieves what it needs to achieve. And so I'd like to then hand over to the chair of the NRF. Sorry, I put you on hold for a while there. You even turned off your camera. You may come in, leadership.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson. I want to first acknowledge the remarks you've made, particularly on the issue of societal impact. that we indeed recognize the importance of it. And that's why even within the NRF, we are pushing for the impact framework to translate into action and implementation. Chairperson, we have questions from honorable members, and I would like to start by addressing some of them, and then I will invite the CEO to comment on the others or add any points, and we will then revert back to you, ma'am. So, Honorable Hachau, indeed, we recognize the importance of not setting a low bar in the way that we are chasing our performance. And I think it would be disingenuous of us to, on the one hand, commit to excellence, and then on the other, set low bar. But we do try to set the bar within the means that we have of resources. And as you correctly say, if the resources diminish, then it limits the extent to which we can it can affect our performance. And so we also have to set the bar within the available means, which is why you may see, for example, in some of the targets around postgraduate, reducing from previous years, depending on the level of funding that we have, even though sometimes we're able to, as CEO indicated, move around certain resources and end up exceeding the bar that we have set. On your question about postgraduate funding, indeed, at the last meeting when we presented the APP, and I believe in other fora as well, we did cry quite a bit about the gap here, whereby we are only really able to fund 35% of applications that are actually fundable. And for this reason, we have about a 65% gap in funding for postgraduate funding students. And we estimated that for last year, for example, this gap needed about 1.3 billion rands. And there is an additional gap in terms of the emerging researchers as well, which is relatively lower than the postgraduate students. But in total, that sort of brought us to a gap of about 2.2 billion rands. So our priority as the board was to try and push for a way to close the gap, particularly for postgraduate funding. We recognize that if we don't necessarily develop our postgraduate students from the research and science disciplines that we need to develop, we are not going to be able to achieve the sectoral impact that we need to achieve, because the pipeline is going to be eroded. We are also not going to be able to meet the contribution that the NRF needs to make towards the National Development Plan. And that's why we have made this a priority. And as a result, we did two things. One was an analysis of what are the sectors that can be considered priority sectors where there are skills gap, where we can then prioritize training in those sectors. The NRF did that exercise with the support of experts in the sector, and then also approached DSI and the minister to assist in this regard. And the minister essentially indicated that we could look towards the National Skills Fund, but because we were looking towards the National Skills Fund, it was even more important that we link the priorities that we have to try and close the gap in postgraduate funding with the sectors that are of priority. And your questions, Honorable Hachau, relate to those 2 points on the gap on postgraduate funding and in terms of closing the challenges in terms of the demands for the sectors. This is the exercise that we have done on the side of the NRF. And once we made that sort of strategic decision, we did hand over to the executive to engage with DSI and DHET to try and unlock this funding. And in principle, we have received support, but there is still quite a bit of work that needs to be done in this regard, at least in terms of catering for the postgraduate funding relevant to the priority sectors and drawing from the National Skills Fund. And the CEO will basically add to that point. I want to also link this to the question that Honorable Mananise raised about the delays in the transfer of funds, and I'm sure CEO will add to that point as well. I think Honorable Mananise, on the point about retention of skills within the NRF, this is important to us, and I think in general, we, as the new board that started in December, have found an entity that generally has a low attrition. It doesn't lose skills that often, but we have also identified that there are things that we need to do from a governance perspective to ensure that the culture of the environment is one that essentially appeals to people with high skills and who are in demand, who would then choose to be with the NRF. And I'll make a point related to this when I address the question from Honorable Boshoff as well. COO may also feel free to add to that. In terms of the inclusion of other universities, one of the things we have found, be it in terms of centers of excellence or in terms of South African research chairs, and generally where funding flows would go. We found that most funds will go to the top universities that are considered research intensive and are ranked amongst the top 5. More recently, we talk about the top 6, since UJ has also entered into the picture as well. And we recognize that that is a trend that has to do with historical factors, which is why in terms of the additional activity that we are bringing forward is that of institutional capacity development. And here in particular, we are concerned with the historically disadvantaged institutions. We have indicated that we know that you need science projects, you need talented scientists, but you also need to have conducive environments where they've got infrastructure, they've got support, systems are working, there is mentorship, there is support for them to do good research and good science and then be able to translate it. And for this reason, we want to support historically disadvantaged institutions and institutions that are currently ranked low, to lift them in order for them to be well capacitated and assist them in terms of performance. We have discussed how to do this in a way that is careful and balanced so that we don't drain resources from the institutions that are already holding up and lifting the science system and essentially the profile of science in South Africa. Ideally, what we should be doing is, with additional funding that we add, we basically prioritize the lifting of those, but avoid a situation where we drain resources from institutions that are doing well to others that we want to capacitate, so that we don't collapse the sector. Just as a matter of principle, this is also one of the reasons why, as the NRF, we have taken the position, and after some discussions and analysis, that the NRF would be better off performing at a budget of about 10 billion rands based on the needs currently. But we are currently at 5 billion rands. And we also recognize that that amount of funding is already nearly half the budget of the DSI. We recognize that the budget that we need may not necessarily come from DSI with the current budget that DSI is having. We appreciate the support we receive, but we need other mechanisms, which is why we are now looking at other sort of sources and pots of funding. The other one that we are looking at, and we've discussed with the DG several times, is a budget coordination, and that came out of the decadal plan, in terms of how can we, with the decadal plan, leverage a budget coordination mechanism across departments in order to support the NRF, and not only support the NRF from the DSI port. We don't have a mechanism for that yet, but it is a strategy that we have on the table, and we hope that as we endeavor to position the NRF to support the high impact sectors, that the departments that have interest in those sectors can also come on board in a budget coordination mechanism to help support the NRF. I'll also just, Chair, with your permission, address the questions. I'll leave the questions from Honorable Spear to the CEO on infrastructure, allocation of funding, as well as scale of the work of fellowships, but address the question from, and I'll also leave the question from Honorable Shikwamba to the CEO, and also just perhaps indicate that we may not be able to do justice to the question that you have raised, Honorable Shikwamba, in terms of the just energy transition, and if perhaps there is a need for a dedicated presentation to provide an update on what is happening in the sector on this. This is something that can be considered. But for the board, I think it's important to address your question, Honorable Boshoff, on the issue of the 2 DCEOs. And I think, as you may have received feedback from the CEO, that indeed we've got 2 DCEOs who have been put on leave. This is a matter that has caused us much distress as the board of the NRF. We considered it baptism by fire, because the moment we walked in December, we had to deal with the first case, and the second one followed immediately on the heels of the first one. And I must say that firstly, it's important to indicate that the decisions that we've made as the board do not necessarily reflect any form of crisis in the NRF. This is important. The NRF is a machine that is working well, and I don't want in any way for the decisions of the board to taint the activities of the NRF, because we've got no concerns on the activities themselves. This is really a matter of good governance and accountability, and I think it fits well in the theme of the accountability ecosystem that we are discussing here, as well as the remarks that the chairperson of the HSRC and the CEO have alluded to. And here we have appointed immediately, when we requested the 2 DCEOs to go on leave, we appointed members who are acting to act in these positions. And these are people who are internal to the NRF, and they took over and ran things very smoothly. In fact, if anything, we've seen improvements in the activities and performance rather than any kind of decline. And one of them is a very experienced scientist who has worked in the ecosystem for a long time across different entities, but is internal to the NRF. And another one is one who's been with the NRF for more than 20 years and has a lot of understanding and has brought that institutional memory into the acting role. And as the board, we are satisfied with where things are, and we are allowing the space for the investigations that are happening in relation to the DCOs to be finalized. We expect that the first matter will be concluded by end of this month, and soon after, the second matter will be concluded as well. We are very eager to make sure that those matters are finalized, and we can bring to the various authorities the full report of the outcomes and the content, I suppose, the substantive report on the issues that were brought in, so that we can put the matter to rest. But as far as the running of the NRF and the activities of the NRF, please be reassured. And I say that in the presence of other board members present here, the executive also present here, and the CEO can also perhaps comment on that. Honorable Chair, if you can permit me, please, to invite the CEO to also add his inputs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and honorable members as well. I think the chairperson of the board has covered at length a number of issues, so I won't repeat those that I think were adequately responded to. Just to start, it's always heartwarming to see how passionate members of this committee are in ensuring that national development happens, and for us to align that with our mandate. So if I start with Honorable Kakau's question, the issue on the shortfall that was asked, I will ask the acting DCO, Dr. Gugu Moche, to respond to that element. Safe to say that I think the chair has covered this at length, but safe to say that I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. It's a question of how do we then still use the limited resources that we have to stretch ourselves to still deliver on our mandate. So Dr. Moche will cover that component. There was a question that Honorable Kakao asked around the 4IR skills. I am going to ask Dr. Mary Jane Bupape to respond to this element. And I think the key component here is around whether we have the necessary skills for the future. My sense is that we don't, so we're still far from that. There are areas where we can identify gaps, not only for the system, but also even in the areas where we perform research as the NRF within our national facilities. So in that particular space, Dr. Bupape will respond to that and just give a sense of some of the areas where there are gaps in the skills. Likewise, Dr. Mamele Musia will touch on that just to also give a sense in relation to what we do, touching on the science engagement and what kind of skills are sitting within the system. Honorable Manani, so I think the question that you asked about the delay from the DHET has been addressed by the chairperson of the board. But I am going to ask Dr. Moche again to deal with this question, just giving the specifics. The sense here is that we got the money in April this year. What impact did it have? Of course, it meant that we could not disperse the money early, but it means we have those funds for this year. So we will respond to that through Dr. Moche. There was also a question on the retention of the skills. I will ask the group executive responsible for HR, Mr. Watwile, to respond to that component. Honorable Sibiya's question as well will be responded to by Dr. Moche, which is the question on the split between the funds between ourselves and the private sector entity, SASOL in this particular space. And very briefly, Dr. Angus Patterson will respond to the infrastructure question from Honorable Sibi. Maybe let me deal with Honorable Chikwambana's question on the energy. And as the chairperson has indicated, we might not be able to deal with this question fully here. But the aspect here is that private sector and public sector equally, we are affected by the challenges within the energy space. And it's a question of how do we then work together? And we see this as a partnership that talks to that intent of working together to address these problems, not only for the private sector, not only for the public sector, but for all of us. In terms of the research that has been conducted, there's large volume of research, but I don't think it's a research problem in itself. It's a question that requires proper understanding of the leadership, what decisions are being made. And we understand that in the current government, various ministries are dealing with this element of dealing with load shedding. What we should be concerned about largely is about the energy crisis of the future. The population is growing, as you saw the census results coming out. Then what happens later on? will we be able to create enough energy? What forms of alternative energies can we get to? And this research has been done and is being done, and we'll continue to support it within ourselves and again together with the private sector. Honorable Bottom's question, I think, has been answered. Just to give the same assurance that there's nothing that is concerning from where I'm sitting, and I think we're seeing positive aspects, so there's nothing to really worry about in terms of the leadership. So with that, I'll just then start with Gugu to answer all the questions that I've asked her to deal with, and then I'll give it to Dr. Upape, then Dr. Musia, then Mr. Wakile, and then lastly, Dr. Patterson to respond to those questions very briefly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't know what's going on with my camera, but having said that, thank you again. And I think just to add to what our chair of the board has alluded to in terms of the gap, is to say that one of the things we have done as the NRF is not just to note that there's a decline in the number of students that we are funding, but what we have also done is to say, how can we engage the private sector to actually see if we can increase the number of students that we are funding. And currently, SASO is one of those, Telkom is one of those, the Energy Mobility Education Trust is another one, formerly the BP Foundation. And we have engaged them, and it's actually one of the contributory factors why we have seen performance a little bit higher than what we have targeted for. But we thought also that maybe the better way of even adding to this initiative is to have a structured way we can do this. And we are now have engaged ISFAB to say, can we sit down and work with them in a very concerted way to say, how do we engage private funding to help with increasing the number of students that we fund? But also, I think, even though we have seen the decline in the number of students that we fund, the amounts have essentially, excuse me, been increased. So whereas in the past, the amounts would have been a little bit lesser than what we are funding now, the issue has been, if we are going to say we give a full cost funding, is the funding adequate to ensure that the student can then focus on studying? So yes, in instances, in some institutions, we have seen the number in terms of actual numbers declining, but in actual value of the amounts that have been dispersed to the institutions, in some instances, it hasn't moved that much from what used to be funded, just to ensure that the students we fund them to the point that they can focus and finish within the prescribed times that we expect them to finish. In terms of the impact of late funding from the National Skills Fund, for one, I think what we have done internally is to anticipate lateness and say, what is it that we can do to ensure that when the money comes in, we haven't impacted on the number of students that we can fund. And what that does, yes, to a large extent, initial internal initiatives on trying to mitigate the risk of impacting the students negatively works to an extent, but we still then end up with a lesser number of students that we can fund. And secondly, what we have seen not only the lateness of funds coming in, but the reduced amounts coming in. That we have seen at some point in 2016, for example, the amounts being around 250 million, and now we're talking around just under 150 million or so. So it's not just also the lateness, it's also the reduced amounts that have been coming. And I think if we are funding students, for example, honor students, and it's money's coming in April, in May, April, May, it's question then is, so what has the student been eating and so forth up to that point? So I just think that indeed, if support can be offered in terms of the funds being dispersed a little bit earlier, I think it helps for us to adequately support the students. In terms of finally the question on the split with SASO, the funding principles have always been that it's a 50% split, right? And to the extent that we can maintain that framework, we do. But we also, to a large extent, what SASO in some instances then does is to say, for example, we would like to support largely historical disadvantaged institutions. And then it's we then work with them to say, how do we then effectively honor that type of request? But in essence, Mr. Chair, the request has been, or at least the framework has been, a 50% split. And I think maybe that covers the question, Mr. CEO, that you had asked.
Recording stopped.
I will then come in regarding the question that the CEO asked me to address, which is on 4IR. I think first thanks CEO as well as honorable members. I think with 4IR, the first point to make is that we all know that data is very important. Therefore, I will just talk to the work that we are doing as national facilities within the NRF, and that is really to say we are making progress in terms of the implementation.
Recording in progress.
In terms of the implementation of the research infrastructures that we are responsible for, just giving an example with the South African Environmental Observation Network, when we talk about this implementation of the research infrastructures, we mean that we are expanding in terms of the observations that we are putting on the ground that can assist us to answer questions that are of environmental nature. We are putting up more automatic weather stations, for example. We are putting more sensors that can allow us to understand what the quality of water is that is available, as well as the amount of water that is available for the communities to use. The platforms that we are working with, we also do make them available for postgraduate students to use. So we do work with universities, and some of our scientists and managers also supervise students on a number of topics. Some would conduct studies that are just focused on observations alone, while others would actually use our data for modeling studies. Then the other thing that we do, again, with the example that is more specific to the environment, is that if you were to look at the other organizations across South Africa that are collecting this type of data, the data is actually closed. So it's not available, while in our case, we develop data platforms that make this data set available. We have just received accreditation from the COTRA seal, which means that the data platform that we have developed is of an international standard. We also engage with other partners. We engage, for example, with the BRICS countries when it comes to the training of our students. We run training workshops on the use of R. It is actually R as well as Python. So these are our software packages that a lot of students use to be able to analyze data. In terms of the training we provide, we also engage at high school level. We've got a training on geographic information system that is accredited by the South African Council of Educators. So that means in terms of the skills, we go all the way from high school level, and we work very closely with SASTA, and Dr. Mamwelezi will speak to this aspect. I think just as I conclude my answer, I will say that in terms of the skills that we need, I would say we are not yet there. There is still a lot more that needs to be done. We have been talking for a very long time, for example, about the development of numerical models that are needed to forecast weather or to project climate change. And at the moment, although these model development aspects were revived more than 20 years ago in South Africa, we are still at a point where we don't have our own developed models. And that in itself means that we are not yet there in terms of the skills that are needed, which means there's a lot more that needs to happen, where engagements have to include physics departments as well as maths departments to make sure that we develop these homegrown models that can deal with the societal challenges that we have. So CEO, I think I want to conclude by just mentioning the Bioscape project that some might have seen. So this week we've made headlines about a Bioscape project, which is a collaboration between South Africa and the US. So there are 2 NASA aircrafts. One arrived yesterday, another one arrived on Tuesday, that will be taking biodiversity observations in the Cape. And we've got about 150 scientists from across South Africa, as well as from the US. The scientists in South Africa were funded by the NRF, and those in the US were funded by NASA, who will be collecting biodiversity information in the Cape. And this data is going to assist in informing the development of satellite infrastructure. But this will obviously be led by NASA, because we are still a little bit limited when it comes to the development of satellite infrastructure. And the data that will be collected from this campaign that will happen over a 6-week period is going to be made available to all South African universities. Postgraduate students will have access to this data set that will be collected to answer societal, relevant questions. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. I will then talk to generally under the work that we're doing in terms of the development of skills for the future of work, and not necessarily just focusing purely on 4IR, which obviously then also is part of the skills that we're requiring for the future of work. The general skills, when one looks at 4IR, for instance, that we're looking for are complex problem solving, creativity, and critical thinking. These skills, we're not necessarily saying we're building them in the classroom, but it is through the initiatives that we're supporting that are at school level, such as the ESCOM Expo for Young Scientists competitions and the National Science Olympiads competitions. Through these, then the learners, for instance, they participate in competitions, and first they identify problems within their societies or their environment, and they come up with ways of solving those problems, be it by themselves or working with the researchers and universities. And when you listen to some of these learners...
Please forgive me. The chair has asked that we wrap up. If we can just keep it short, okay, and then we can allow Dr. Patterson to also keep it short and close. Thank you.
So it's in terms of competitions and fairs at school levels, we're also engaging, we have a partnership with the Department of Basic Education, where we're able we're offering workshops to educators so that they are able to then create or assist the learners to develop their skills. And I think we also are providing coding and robotics training for educators, and also the resources. As we're speaking, we're putting together a science hub in Umtata, where we want to ensure that the learners there, they have access to some of these resources. And lastly, the science centers that we have throughout the country, we also are capacitating them as well to be able to ensure that the learners develop these skills for the future of work. And with that, I'd like to thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc. Dr. Patterson?
Yeah, on the infrastructure, quick one. Today was
Recording stopped.
was very opportune. I was on site for the SKA this week. And I must say, I felt very proud to be a South African. Amazing
Recording in
infrastructure that we're
progress.
developing. Overall, last year was an excellent year with both the Meerkat and the big builds with SKA, but also most importantly in terms of science and society for the subatomic nuclear guys, the launch of the isotope facility for medical facilities. Mary Jane has touched on a number of the environmental infrastructures that have been going up, including a lot of it into the blue economy. We managed to get down to 1 kilometer in depth in some of our infrastructures. Lastly, just because I know we're very short time, a lot of the efforts also been going to historically disadvantaged entities, both in linkage with them
Recording
to make sure that they have access to infrastructures, but also developing infrastructures at them. For example, a new pollution center at UWC, and we're about to launch a new center at UNIZOR for ecotoxicology. So overall, I'd like to let the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee to say that the infrastructure had an excellent year last year, and we'll continue to have a good one this year. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Over to you, Honorable Chair, and apologies for taking time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I would then like to hand over to Dr. Lubisi and Prof. Muswetsa.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, for the opportunity, and we wish to thank you for your encouragement and keeping us on our toes so that we are able to pursue all the recommendations that this committee makes and AG makes. We agree with you that impact indeed has become quite key in any of modern day organizations. The HSRC itself, in its institutional review of 2018, realized this and built it in its strategic plan, 5-year strategic plan 2020 to 2025, to the extent that an impact center was created actually as part of our main structures in the HSRC. The group executive, Professor Heidi van Rooyen, is actually attending this meeting, but she's joining us from Wales, where she is attending an international impact conference, because it's not only us, South Africa, but the whole world that recognizes the impact of the importance of impact in the work that we do, not just inputs. Most of the questions and comments I will leave Chairperson to the CEO and the team. At board level, we had not yet gotten the feedback regarding the matters raised by the AG and the DSI, particularly regarding the timeless completion of qualifications and the need for tracking these. We will take our cue from management, but we think, in my view, we think this is a very good suggestion to get a sense as to why this is happening and ensure that we can add greater oomph in the tracking of the timeless completion of qualifications. There are issues which have been raised by Comrade, Honorable Member Khao, and which was asked to both us and the CSIR whether there's any work done to include TVET students. Now, this is a matter which certainly at board level we haven't dealt with, and I hope that the CEO will be able to respond to that question. And there are issues relating to the loss of funds from irregular expenditure. No, there is not necessarily a loss of funds. And the 51 cases that were investigated were not for the financial year under review, as we indicated in our introduction. There was no identification of irregular expenditure in 2022-23. These are previous years, and as you would recall, at my very first meeting of the portfolio committee, we had to deal with this issue. This meeting took place on the 19th of November 2021. There was a strong input from the portfolio committee about the need to investigate this irregular expenditure, and of course accompany that with consequence management, which is what we have done, which is why you find the AG this year saying there are no consequence management issues at the HSRC currently. So these are historical legacy issues which the board had to deal with. Honorable Nanisa raised an important question of staff morale, because staff is everything in your organization. If staff morale is low, you are likely to begin to lose some good people. When we, as a new board, arrived, staff morale, everyone told us staff morale at the HSRC was at its lowest. Former chairperson, Dr. Mvuyo Tom, briefed me about this, as well as then acting CEO, who's in this meeting, our deputy CEO, Professor Simbai, briefed me about this, and we briefed the board. And largely the issues were exactly what Honorable Mananiso was raising, the issue of remuneration. Because, for instance, the executives at that time had not had a salary increase for 4 years. And staff in the organization had not had a salary increase for 3 years. And essentially, their salaries in real terms were decreasing, putting serious pressure on their ability to put food on their table, on the tables of their families. And one of the things that we did was to deal with that matter quite decisively in discussion with National Treasury, as well as the Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation. So we dealt with that, and we've consistently dealt with it in the past 2 years in order to try to raise staff morale. And we think that intervention did achieve what was intended. But obviously, the organizations are always dynamic and will always have issues around staff morale, which we have to consistently deal with. Otherwise, we begin to lose people. Generally, what we found is that the HSRC's remuneration scales were below comparable organizations, and particularly universities. And the fact that researchers were basically having their salary reduced in real terms affected us in a manner that we saw some of our staff joining universities who were paying much better than us. So, but I believe that that trend is being reversed as we speak. I would leave the question as asked by Honorable Shikombana on the types of consequence management to the CEO and her team. But as I say, I want to emphasize irregular expenditure does not equate to losing money. All it means is that you spend the money without following the regulations. But all the money was correctly spent, on what was intended, and what was said to be bought was bought. But the steps were not followed. That was the issue. It was not an issue of loss of money when it comes to irregular expenditure in the HSRC. It was not that at all. And in regard to the issue of the tax matters, which again, this is a legacy issue. It comes from as early as 2016, if I'm not mistaken, or even earlier. So we are dealing with it as a legacy matter. And as I said, we have already collected in a few months that we started collecting 4.12 million rand of the 6.5 million rand. And as I indicated, 1.1% has not been collected because the people are deceased, they are dead, and their estates have been closed. And therefore we had to take the decision to write that off because you can't claim it from anyone. 35% that is remaining, as indicated, is largely from people who are no longer with HSRC. So to track them is more difficult than to collect from people who are still with us in the HSRC. So that is continuing, and we will continuously report, and we are continuously reporting actually to the AG on progress in this regard. Let me hand over, Chairperson, without taking much of your time, to the CEO and her team to respond to some of the questions that were being asked, particularly also from Honorable Subia for the underperformance in the two areas, particularly in the area of transformation. Maybe she can give a greater detail on that. But on the matter, for instance, of the leadership in knowledge and production, as indicated by the CEO, it's sometimes very difficult to control when journals and publishers publish. You can submit your paper, but there's going to be a process of peer review and all those kinds of things. Even though you have submitted, what we count is when the paper is actually published, not when you submitted it. So it's difficult to control journals as to when they publish and all that. So the 71% comes from the 40% in regard to transformation. The CEO started explaining it, and I would ask her maybe to give more light on that. Thank you very much, Chairperson. If with your permission, can I request the CEO to take over from here? Thank you.
Thanks, Chairperson and honorable members. Greatly appreciated for your questions and also for your encouraging words. And with that, I think we will aim and strive to do better this financial year. And as I've indicated, we are already making a progress. I want to just touch on three things, and the Chairperson has already addressed matters around the HR space, so we won't go there. So first, indeed, in a very short space of time, we have been able to turn things around with the support of board around consequence management. And that report is fully going to be deliberated by the board at the next board meeting, and we are more than happy to provide
recording in progress.
Provide further information to the committee through the HSRC. Safe to say that yes, consequence management has been applied. Consequence management letters were issued. Warning letters were also issued, as the chairperson has correctly pointed out. Where no money was lost on the tax matter, we are in recovery mode and are making progress. On the third issue around what the chairperson, honorable chairperson, has indicated, indeed, lack of resources is an important factor in non-performance, but it is not the only factor and should not at all be used as an excuse for non-performance. Let me just address the issue around funding then. To date, we have made progress working very closely with DSI and with their full support. We have applied for the NSF funding, and to date, NSF has positively also responded to our call. We are in the process, we are in the due diligence process. They have visited us, we've given them all the information, and we are awaiting their final response to that call for funding, which will go a long way in addressing that particular transformation target that we did not meet. This is essentially expanding our internship program so that we attract the right individuals and place them. I think this is also goes a long way with that discussion around TVET. We should consider, and we should have some kind of further deliberation as management around the TVET and the TVET sector. But our internship program indeed includes those learners from TVET colleges who've qualified. And we want to expand on that. That's NSF. From DSI specifically, with the current budget cuts, I am pleased that DSI has indicated to us that there will be no budget cuts for HSRC, and that's a positive move. That's how DSI has been supporting us and leading us completely. On the funding matter, again, National Treasury over the years, they have condoned the use of our surplus. We are expecting that continued support even in this financial year. Chair, let me ask the Deputy CEO maybe to speak on the monitoring and evaluation and any other matter that he wants to speak to on the research side. From the finance side, particularly Honorable Mamsibia, the CFO will address the issues raised at this point. I would have loved our executive services executive to speak on staffing matters and our plans there. In respect of time, I think most of the issues have been addressed by the chair. Deputy CEO.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and honorable members. I will just jump straight into the performance where we have fallen short. The Chair, Dr. Rubisi, did explain with regard to the first two publications indicators. The second one, of which has to do with collaboration with researchers who are based in other countries outside of South Africa. In both cases, we did come quite close, but unfortunately, as Dr. Rubisi indicated, the matter is out of our control. With regard to the other indicators, which the CEO also touched on in the presentation, I think it's important for the committee to note that, yes, these are targets we set ourselves. They are fairly hard. For example, we have aimed for senior researchers who are above a level which we call senior research specialists and above. We have aimed to have Black, colored, and Indian researchers according to employment equity at 51%. We fell short of that just by 3%. And in terms of female senior researchers at the same levels. Again, we set a target of 39% and we fell short by 3%. I know that is important. The point is really that we are doing our level best, and in terms of current recruitment, the recruitment that we had started before National Treasury called for a moratorium, we are hoping that we will make up for some of those numbers. And then lastly, on the percentage of researchers who hold PhDs, those who are not interns, we have a relatively high target, which is on purpose in line with government thinking, particularly DSI and NRF, where we have set ourselves a target of 77%, and we were able to achieve 70%. Again, through the recruitment we are doing currently, we are hoping to improve on that. So we are trying to mitigate as much as we can. But again, as Dr. Lubisi did indicate, of course, when we think we are nearly there, then unfortunately we do lose some of our staff to other institutions in this sector. Looking at the time, I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Deputy CEO. CFO?
Thank you very much, CEO, Chairperson and honourable members. First of all, the question was asked about our deficit in the audited financial year. I would just like to bring to the Portfolio Committee's attention, remember, we provide our financial statements on the accrual basis and not as the department on the cash basis, first of all. Although we've got an accounting deficit in our statement of financial performance for the year, we actually have got a cash surplus. And this is calculated in terms of the National Treasury Instruction Note 12 of 2021, where we take our cash reserves and deduct our liabilities. And according to that, we've got an 84.9 million surplus in the current year. The deficit in the current year was created when expenditure relating to the last year's surplus was accounted for in the current year. That's the correct treatment thereof. But we are full of confidence that the 23-24 financial year, we will use that money. So accounting-wise, we must still have a deficit, but I can ensure that the current year's budget, the cash surplus budget, will be achieved. On mitigating strategies for audit findings, the last thing remaining for the old audit findings pertaining to the material irregularity will be cleared up before year end, with the irregular expenditure going to board, as well as the fruitless and wasteful expenditure with motivations. The current year, it's mostly internal audit deficiencies that we'll definitely address, making sure our policies and the policies are followed consequently. I just wanted to quickly see, I believe that's all. As indicated, we do have a consequence management policy that board is going to approve or look at the next board meeting. The first version lacked a couple of things. We have been implementing it, but it's not fully approved by board, but going forward, it will be obtained. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think that concludes our responses to the questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, CEO, and thank you very much to the Chair and all the colleagues that have responded. And then to hand over to the last entity, which is the CSIR, Mr. Chachana.
Hello, Chair. Thank you very much. I will only confirm from our side that, as we indicated in the presentation, we are firmly focused on driving impact. However, in terms of bigger social impact from the CSIR, I'm going to get the CEO and his team to respond on the more pointed technical questions around performance and other questions that were raised by the committee. Dr. Lamine, I hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. In the interest of time, Honorable Chair, I've classified our questions into the following. On the issue of target setting and commercialization, I'll answer those. Then I would like to invite my colleague, Mr. Mabindisa, to speak to the issue of skills retention in our engagement with TVETs. Advocate Kennedy to talk to the issues of PPE investment and related questions around that. And then Dr. Malinga to speak to the issue of the portal app and the ICT forum. I'll also answer the question around the Aeroswift project. So on the issue of stretch targets, I just want to give assurance to the committee that it's something that we look at very, very closely. I mean, we believe in excellence as an organization. It's one of our values, in fact. And this translates into the way that we do our business and how we then plan with regards to the impact that we wish to make. There's a very rigorous planning process within the organization, which includes very robust engagements with the board when we set targets for the CSIR. But at the same time, Chairperson, I want to caution that we need to be realistic about this. I think we find ourselves in a situation where, year to year, there's an expectation of growth in terms of outputs, in terms of outcomes, and in terms of impact. But the investment that is required to realize this growth is not growth. So we need to make sure that there's a certain level of realism with regards to expectations and the investment that is required to deliver the outcomes that are expected from entities like ourselves. On the issue of commercialization, I think the question was in relation to the number of technology license agreements that are signed with industry, where we did not meet our target and the challenges that we face with regards to this. I think there are a number of issues that I think we need to deal with as a system to drive better realization of the impact of the technologies that are being developed by ourselves, but by also other players within the national system of innovation. I think the one issue that we need to understand is that commercialization of intellectual property is a very expensive endeavor. I'll give an example. We are now in the third year of commercializing one piece of IP which finds application in the defense sector with a partner from Germany, which has operations in South Africa. This single piece of IP, the total investment that we've had to put aside, just to get the IP ready for the partner to invest in the manufacturing facility. We've invested close to 300 million between ourselves and the partner. So it's a significant investment that is required for us to commercialize, IP within South Africa. And in my view, our funding model for the commercialization of IP as a system needs to be relooked at. I think, for instance, I would argue that the budget of the Technology Innovation Agency should at least be 10 times what they are receiving today, if we want to see commercialization of IP at the pace and scale that we are all asking for in terms of what is coming out of the system. So that is a major, major obstacle that we are all facing. And now that is combined by the fact that as a country, we do not have a mature ecosystem in terms of investors, and entrepreneurs that can take the IP coming out of institutions like the CSIR, like universities, into market. I think those are some of the systemic issues that I think we need to address, in my view, to get better at commercializing our IP. The special purpose vehicle, the entity that I spoke about earlier, that we are creating as a CSIR, we hope will go a long way in terms of addressing some of these systemic issues that we are facing as a country around our ability to commercialize IP. With regards to the question on the Aeroswift project by Honorable Boshoff, I would like to highlight that what the committee saw when they visited the CSIR in 2020, I think, was a prototype. It was not a machine. It was not a production machine. It still needed to be industrialized for it to get to be a production machine. One of the setbacks that, of course, we encountered with this project was that we lost our commercial partner for reasons that were beyond our control. And therefore, we had to find a new commercial partner to take this to the market with us, because we couldn't on our own as a CSR, even with the funding that we received from the DSI, get this commercialized, given the significant investment that is required to do this. We've now identified a partner that is working with us to commercialize a smaller scale version of the prototype that you saw. And we are making good progress in terms of getting this to market. Of course, the commercialization of this piece of intellectual property is not a straightforward matter. There are various models that you can look at. One is, to look at setting up an enterprise that produces these 3D printers and sells them. The other one is to set up a facility that uses the 3D printers themselves to manufacture, various components. And we're exploring both of these opportunities. The partner that we're working with now has an interest in terms of the production of the machines themselves and trying to get them into market. But both opportunities, of course, present interesting avenues in terms of how we can get this to market. With that, Chair, I would like to invite Mr. Mabindisa and then Advocate Kennedy, and then lastly, Dr. Malinga to comment on the points as I've indicated earlier. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, CEO, and good afternoon. Right. So in terms of the question, right, related to the TVET colleges. So in terms of as the CSIR, how we approach this subject. So it's through influencing, right, the national framework, right, for future skills development, right, for TVETs. And this is done through the industry partnered learning factories, right, where we partner with the NSA, NSF, DHET being in the center, right, of this initiative, DSI, the CETAs, and some higher education institutions. And this focus is more approaching this in a holistic manner, where we're looking at the issue of the curriculum, right, development, issues of qualifications that are relevant, that talks to the issue of the data science, big data, analytics, the issue of the artificial intelligence, blockchain, machine learning, virtual reality, etc. Looking at the issue of the lecturer and trainer quality development, where we're working with the likes of the University of KwaZulu-Natal, right? Looking at how we can ensure that we develop our lecturers. And then in terms of looking at the issues of innovations and entrepreneurship, so not only focusing on the issue of ensuring that we employ, but that the students that obtain these qualifications, they can also open, right, their own businesses and be entrepreneurs. Looking at how we partner with industries, right, and also looking at the issues of accreditations, working with the QCTOs, right, and practical, the issues of practical training. Where do they get the actual, right, training, right, and as well as the training, the 4IR, right, training related infrastructure. So that's how we approaching this, and we are working with, for instance, currently with NSA, right, in terms of preparing, right, for a national conference, right, for 2024. So on the issue of the staff motivation, right, or staff retention. So our approach, right, it's a more holistic approach, right? So as the CSIR, so and it's underpinned, right, by what we call a people strategy framework. So first we look at how we engage, right, with the staff at the CSIR, right? So looking at the issues of the one-on-one engagements, right, with staff, where we ensure that we engage
there's engagement between the manager and the employee, right? And also to ensure that there's that effective, right, management, conflict resolution, right? And also in terms of dealing with the issues, right, of increased productivity. Then going further, where we look at how, as the leadership, we engage, right, with employees, right? We've got various platforms such as the brown paperback sessions, right, where we ensure that we engage with staff on matters of mutual interest, right, and concerns in a transparent and open manner. And there's platforms such as the climate survey, where we engage employees, right, on issues of employee satisfaction and also engagement. So we then approach it further in looking at matters of culture. So our epic values, right, that underpin how we engage, right, with staff and how we do business. So that's key, right? And then there's how we approach the issues of social cohesion, right, within the business. So where we engage with staff and ensure that they participate, right, on the social responsibility, organizational social responsibilities. Then we also have a very comprehensive rewards and recognition, right, program that is underpinned, right, by the employee value proposition. So this looks at our total rewards, guaranteed pay, but also the issues of recognition, so such as the annual recognition programs. And then all this, as I said earlier, is underpinned by our employee value proposition, right? That has 4 pillars, and I'm not going to go into the details of the pillars. But then we also look at how we provide our employees, right, with the resources in order for them and tools, right, to do their work. And this is more important because we have a flexi ways of working, right, where we've introduced the flexi working from home, right? So that's key, right, in terms of the issues of staff retention. And then we then have the employee wellness. So that's focusing on the issues of the health, psychosocial, and wellness, and more so the sports. As an example, tomorrow as the CSIR, right, we have the CSIR race, right? And finally, issues that focus on opportunities and growth. So this looks at the issues of career progression, training, so both technical and leadership training, right? And as well as ensuring that we expose our employees internationally, and as well as both to private through staff exchanges. So that's all, CEO, that I would share. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. Let Advocate Kennedy, if you can also just be brief. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO, and good afternoon to the honourable members and colleagues. So in reference to the infrastructure and the ageing infrastructure of the CSIR, it is indeed true that the typical lifespan of a
I don't know if it's my network.
Yeah, it looks like we've lost. Esme, we lost you there.
Apologies, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Maybe you can also switch off your camera in case it's a network issue.
Thank you, Chair. I'll do so. Is that better?
Yes, you may proceed. Thanks.
Thank you. I was indicating that indeed the aging infrastructure of the CSIR is reaching a point where it requires significant investment. This is true for the buildings as well as our electrical infrastructure, which exceeds the 40-year mark. Although this is really requires significant long-term investment, we have undertaken several projects to address this. In the first instance, we're currently busy with a building condition assessment to allow us to prioritize our investment in terms of building improvements more effectively. We also have a long-term infrastructure investment plan that's under development and that will be informed by the outcomes of this building condition assessment. In terms of our electrical infrastructure, it similarly requires significant investment, especially in terms of the replacement of the main substation. Fortunately, the transformers in that substation has been replaced in recent years, but the remainder of the substation is in urgent need of repair, as well as the transformers and distribution boards, etc., across the various campuses. This is also the subject of our infrastructure investment plan, and some progress has been made. For instance, the design work for the main substation has been completed this financial year, and we're about 10% in terms of our completion for transformer replacement, to name but a few. However, if we do not stay ahead of the curve of continued investment, we do run the risk that these facilities will start failing on us, and we have seen a significant increase in our maintenance cost as a result of the older infrastructure. The Honourable Member also mentioned the readiness to take up the DHET as a tenant. The CSIR, in fact, has for some time been awaiting the DHET to formally commit to a lease arrangement, and the spaces for this lease has in fact been prepared. In fact, for the last 2 years, we have been ready, and unfortunately, we have suffered significant delays in them joining us on site, and we look forward to that being resolved as this lack of or loss of revenue from a rental perspective is also impacting our ability to continue to invest in our infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Advocate Kennedy. Dr. Malinga, please.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and members. I'll respond to 2 questions. The first one is on the app. Indeed, it's our intention to roll out the app for road infrastructure reporting and repairs. We're currently working with Sandra for that purpose, and so soon enough, at the very least, it will be rolled out to the national road infrastructure. The CSR does intend to also roll it at the provincial as well as local level. And indeed, the CEO is planning to have a provincial roadmap whereby we communicate the applications and the services that we, as the CSR, offer nationally to the other provinces. And so it's something that we're looking into, and we'll be doing so in the near future. Now, coming to the issue of whether the CSR is a member of the ICT Forum, we are not necessarily participating in the ICT Forum. I think to some extent, as the CSR, we are involved in a number of platforms and forums where we contribute to a large extent. And so we sometimes have to make choices as to where can we make more meaningful contribution. I want to just touch on some of these forums where we, as the CSR, contribute and participate. One of which is the ITU, or the International Communication Union, under the DCDT, where we contribute to how can we optimize the use of our spectrum and to protect it for the benefit of our country. We also take part in the 5G Forum, which is driven by ICASA, to see how we can ensure that as things change, next generation of connectivity is rolled out as a country, we are not lagging behind. Our contribution and where we serve as well is in the South African Center for Digital Language Resources, CDILA, which is driven by the DSI, which looks at language technologies for the official languages that we have as a country, promoting those out to you, building technology and access to different communities in terms of digital access. We also serve on the NACI, the National Advisory Council on Innovation on IT-related matters as the CSIR. The other area where we contribute is NITEX, the National Institute for Theoretical and Computational Sciences. This is a forum and a platform that includes R&D institutions and universities that are driving the latest technologies and innovations with regards to ICT and computation, including quantum computing. But underpinning all of this is the program that's funded by the DSI, the Foundational Digital Capabilities Research Program, which is the key for driving the national initiatives with regards to ICT. And it involves universities, companies, private industry, and is driven by the DSI under the CSIR. And so it drives issues of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the new innovations that are required. And it forms, as it were, a think tank with regards to ICT in the country. And so it's through this forum and this platform that the CSIR contributes and participates in different forums with regards to ICT. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Malenga. I will hand back to the Jahana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CEO. Chair, we have attempted to address most of the questions. I'm not going to make further comments. I will hand over back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues from the CSIR, led by the chairperson, Mr. Jahana, together with the CEO, Mr. Dlamini, Dr. Dlamini. Hey, Gizo Shaiwa Labu, good science and innovation. Oh, Dr. Ngbabi's old Mr. That's why it's seen as prefer nje isizulu ngoba unumzane ufundisha nhlari. But thank you very much, Dr. Dlamini. Thank you very much, Mr. Jahana. And thank you very much to all colleagues from the various entities that presented today and for your responses. I hope the bulk of members' questions has been responded to. I've noted colleagues who have felt that there's a need to perhaps unpack on some of the responses, maybe in a portfolio committee, so we can try and lift some of those matters. We can see how we couple them to create a theme where we can solely discuss that. But I've also noted members or colleagues who have said they'd like to respond in greater detail. And those of you who needed an opportunity to respond in greater detail can do so in writing. And for the data that members have asked for within the next 7 working days, please make sure that you submit that to the committee. But really to thank you all for your commitment, to acknowledge the commitments you've also made to strengthening the work that you're doing in various segments where we've noted that maybe we're not doing as well as we should be doing. Thank you for sharing where government should be supporting you more in order for you to meet your mandates. And I hope that you have noted not only the recommendations that have come from members, but recommendations that have also come from the AG and the department. And we also acknowledge areas in which we need to have or advocate more for you to be supported in the work that you ought to be doing. So really, thank you, colleagues. Thank you for aligning your work and your thinking around your work to some of the key values of the committee around transformation, inclusivity, impact, and so forth. I was worried when I hadn't seen the CFOs presenting, but we acknowledge that they, in the responses, have come forth, and more colleagues have also contributed to the responses. So definitely the CEOs are supported. So I don't really think that there's much that one needs to be summarizing. The conversation we've had today was quite succinct. And so I really want to appreciate the work that you do, appreciate your time, and wish you well. I guess we have all committed to the recommendations that have been given to us by the AG, and we'll be including those in our audit action plans. And part of those audit action plans should be what members have also spoken to. And some of the recommendations should not only be left to the audit action plans, but should also influence your planning going into the future for the next financial years. So thank you very much, honorable members. Thank you very much to our colleagues. We wish you all a fun Friday and a restful weekend. This meeting has come to an end. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Long live the chair.
Long live Honorable Little.
Goodbye, colleagues. I hope you all live long.
Wish goodbye, Honorable Boshoff.